Good afternoon, Keith Tebow from FRCmedia. Thank you for joining us today. Since early spring, we've actually done quite a bit on keeping you informed on the reasons why you should take part in the United States Census. You've got a few more weeks to do it. There was an extension. Federal court ruled that the census can continue to count people right up until the end of the month. And we had this gentleman on earlier, back in April, the regional director of the US Census Bureau. Joining us again, Jeff Behler. Jeff, thank you for joining me again. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's great to see you again, Keith.
Thank you. So Jeff, there's been a lot that has happened since April, but the long and short of it is, there's been a lot of factors. COVID, of course, we'll get into it in a moment, but in communities like Fall River, we are seeing currently, I believe the latest stat is we have a self-reporting rate of about 58%, 58.1%. 10 years ago was closer to 60%. Communities like ours, gateway communities, communities that are extremely diverse, there tends to be sometimes a lag in terms of reporting. Are you seeing that in other communities as well across the country?
Yeah, so certainly, I think overall across the country, self-response was actually better than what it was in 2010, which is amazing, given the COVID-19 pandemic and all the challenges that brought to communities, certainly throughout the nation and throughout Massachusetts. I think it's a testament to the work that you and all of our partners have done in just educating the communities, the community members on why the census is so important, letting them know how easy it is to fill it out and how safe it is to participate in the census, that the data can't be used against them for harm. And because of that, we have seen some great rates. I mean, to think that it's roughly a little less than 2% behind where it was in 2010, that's amazing. That's amazing given the fact that we weren't able to host a lot of events, a lot of in-person events, which we know for many communities is the best way to educate and motivate them to respond.
Yeah, the mayor in Fall River, Paul Coogan, was able to get some money from the Secretary of State of Massachusetts to help in the effort to get the word out about the census. They had a number of local college students take part over the summer to do some of that in-person outreach, and I think it has made an impact. But in terms of communities like a Fall River and other those mid-sized cities, if you will. What is it that the census is trying to do in the last few weeks of this campaign to get people back out there and try to get them to take part?
Yeah, so we are out there right now knocking on every door of every address that has yet to participate in the 2020 census. We'll continue to do that up until October 31st. Now, we truly are almost done. 99.9% of the addresses throughout the state of Massachusetts have already been enumerated in the 2020 census. Whether they've self-responded by going online at 2020census.gov or calling one of our toll-free telephone numbers or filling out that paper form if they still have it hanging on the fridge, do that today, get it back in. Um, we have another whole group of enumeration that's been done by us knocking on the door and having that conversation, in person on that front porch or in the hallway, collecting that information. And then a third group are those that we've knocked on the door numerous times. They haven't responded. Well, we have the ability to go to a neighbor, a proxy, and gather as much information as we can from that proxy in the event that household doesn't want to participate. So there's still time for every household. If you haven't responded to the census, please go online, 2020census.gov, fill it out. Let's make sure we have the best information possible. And historically, that's been when households will self-respond.
Now, in terms of the in-person calls, you mentioned about the privacy issue, that the information that's being provided by people by law cannot be used for any purpose, and it is really just a counting event, if you will. You're not getting any personal financial information and the like. Has there still been questions about the privacy of it, and combined with people's fear of COVID, why they're not appealing to people that may be coming to their doors?
Yeah, absolutely. Two great points. And when we talk about, opening your door to a census taker, it's safe. Even the Center for Disease Control released a statement saying that opening your door to a census taker is safe because of the precautions, because of the policies and guidelines we put in place. For instance, every one of our census takers must wear a mask. When they knock on your door, they must back up 6 feet. There's no need for them to come into your home. We remind them about washing their hands frequently. We even give them hand sanitizer and extra masks to use when they're out there working. So it's safe from a health perspective to open up your door and to have that conversation. In addition, every one of our census employees, with the first hour on the job, you take an oath of confidentiality, and that oath is for life. That's for their entire lifetime, not just while they work. And that oath basically states that if they were to release information about an individual or their household at any time, they will be imprisoned up to 5 years and fined up to $250,000. And you're absolutely right. When we release this data to the public, it's not at a person or household level. It's at some higher level geography, whether that's a city or a town or a county or a state. And it never includes names or addresses. So please, we want the public to feel confident that the data they provide cannot be shared with anyone at any time for any reason. And that includes law enforcement agencies, includes ICE and Homeland Security, includes local housing authorities. No one can access this data at the person or household level.
We've talked about last time you were on about the need for the census. It involves the reapportionment, the redistricting of congressional seats, and then it also funnels down, of course, to state redistricting, and also the amount of money that local communities receive in federal funds that will help schools, police, and fire, and the like. But I guess a question for you is if the numbers are not where it is expected in terms of reporting. I mentioned, 58% right now in Fall River. Is there a method for the census to sort of calculate? Are there formulas that will provide a more accurate count of a community if not as many people take part?
Yeah, so we will get a response for 100% of the addresses across the state and 100% of the addresses in every community. What we hope is that the majority of addresses will self-respond. They will go online or call it in over the phone or fill it out on paper and mail it back in. Again, then we'll go out and start knocking on doors of every address that has yet to respond. And hopefully they'll open up their door and have that conversation with us. In the event that they don't, we have the ability to go to a knowledgeable proxy, typically after 6 attempts. And then those 6 attempts probably, took place over a 2 to 3 week period. We'll go to a knowledgeable neighbor, whether it's apartment manager, whether it's a or knowledgeable proxy, whether it's a neighbor. Just, do they know? Can they tell us, is that housing unit next to them occupied? And if so, how many people live there? And then at the very end of the census, after all the counting has been done, for any addresses that are remaining that we haven't got them to self-respond, they wouldn't open up their door to a census taker, and we couldn't find proxy information. That's when we do statistical imputation. That's when we look at data that surrounds that particular home to come up with an average or a statistical calculation to determine what we think that household looks like based upon data around them. Historically, that's been less than 1% of households across the nation. We've had to do that. And that's our goal, is to get to 99% or above for every state across our country and territory. And currently in Massachusetts, we're at 99.9%, which is fantastic.
Now, in terms of history, the deadline has been extended to October 31st for this work to take place. But during a traditional decennial census, normally doesn't last this long, or does it?
No, you're absolutely right. It doesn't. Our schedule really shifted. The start date was the same. The planned start date for the 2020 census was March 12th. And we still started data collection, self-response, on March 12th. Under our original schedule prior to COVID-19, we were supposed to stop data collection July 31st. But certainly it wasn't safe to go start knocking on doors in March and April of this year. It wasn't safe for the public. It wasn't safe for our employees. So that's when we pushed the schedule out farther into the calendar year. We started knocking on doors in August. And of course, we'll continue knocking on doors until the end of October.
So I guess my next question is, after October 31st, what happens next? What happens with the data? When can states start finding some of that data so they can work on, congressional districts and the like? So I guess what are the next steps after October 31st?
Yeah, as of right now, what the date that's under law, the one date that's under law is December 31st of 2020. And unless there's some change by that date, we have to provide to the President of the United States the apportionment counts. It's really the population by state. That's information that's used to determine how many seats each state will have in Congress. So we provide that data by December 31st to the President and then to Congress. And then shortly after that, again, assuming the deadlines remain as they are, by the end of March, by April 1st, basically, we provide the apportionment count state files to each state so they can start their redistricting efforts. And then after that, we'll start releasing data to the public, at higher levels, the larger cities, and then we'll start releasing additional data that looks at age distribution or race and ethnicities, home ownership, those type of things in spring into the summer of next year.
And as of right now, again, I was able to see the rates of enumeration and also the self-reporting rates. That's available online for anyone to see, correct? They can just go to the website and find that out.
Yeah, absolutely. 2020census.gov. We have a couple tools on there. One that shows the state level response rates, and that's the percentage of households that have self-responded, in addition to the percentage of households that have completed their census by us knocking on their door. And again, for Massachusetts at 99.9%. We also have a self-response rate tool where you can see communities at a very low level, the percentage of households in that community that have self-responded to the 2020 census.
Has there ever been any goals going into a census in terms of what you'd like to see that self-response rate be? Obviously, you want it as high as possible, but like I said, for a city like Fall River, 10 years ago it was 60%. We're just a little below that now at 58. Is there a goal in mind? And does it, I guess, change depending on the size and the makeup of a community?
Yeah, absolutely. I can tell you from a national perspective, going into the 2020 census, and this is before we knew anything about COVID, we had anticipated that we would reach a 60.5% self response rate by the time we started knocking on doors. Remember, we have to plan years in advance. How many people are we going to need to hire? How many devices are we going to need? In order to do that, we have to determine what we think the self response rate is going to be at the time we start knocking on doors. And again, 60.5% before we knew anything about COVID 19. Actually, we hit over 63% before we started knocking on doors. We're currently at 66.7%. We bypassed where we were at in 2010. I think the final self-response rate was 66.5. We're currently at 66.7. During a pandemic, that truly is amazing. And again, it's a testament to the amazing partners who have worked tirelessly over the past 2 years to educate their community on why the census is so important.
And finally, Jeff, if you can speak to the people of Fall River that may not have been involved yet in terms of contributing to information to the census, what would you tell them?
Yeah, please take the 5 to 10 minute investment for the next 10 years for your community. Go online tonight at 2020census.gov. Click the respond button, fill out your census tonight. We may have your data already. We may have talked to a neighbor about how many people live in your household, but for the highest quality data, the most accurate data we can collect, it's when you respond for your household. So go online, call one of our toll-free telephone numbers. 844-330-2020 is our English line. Make sure you and your family get counted, and then talk to your neighbors. Talk to your friends, those that you work with, your family and friends, those you worship with. Ask them if they filled that out. If they didn't, tell them how easy it was. Let them know what you learned about how safe the data is, that Title 13 protects every piece of data we collect. And let them know what's at stake for the next 10 years. This is a national competition to get every community to get their fair share of representation and federal funding for the next 10 years.